broad areas in there. There is the land area, data on land area, data on yield, data on production. We also have the traded volumes, so how much, what volumes of raw cashew nuts are being exported. And then we also have price information, farm gate prices, and then CFR based on the destination. I'll go into all that. So if you take the first segment, which is more the land area, it's showing you what cashew land area is there for West Africa, also for East Africa. And then the third chart here is talking about a comparison of East and West Africa. Again, we look at the regional production for East and West Africa and the total of Africa, as well as projections from 2021 to 2030. So it allows you to have the actuals for the period from 2009 up to 2020, and then also projections here. And we do it also for specific countries. You will also realize that the tool is able to allow you to determine which countries data you are showing. Here for this particular chart, you have the information showing Cote d'Ivoire and comparing with, say, the rest of West Africa. But it is possible once you click on the filter functionality in Excel to have the whole list drop down and extracted from the database, which allows you to tell specifically which countries you want to display in terms of the data. So I have clicked on the filter functionality, and what we are seeing now is the country that is showing Cote d'Ivoire. So you can even decide that you are adding Benin, Burkina Faso, maybe even Ghana here, and then the chart is going to reorganize itself to bring you information, and you can easily modify and rearrange everything. So that allows you a lot of functionality in there. We have even for the years that are on display here, 2016 to 2020, but we are showing over 10 years data. So it starts from 2009. So you can even decide that you want to show the entire database, and then all that will appear for you. And this holds for all the charts that are on display here. So it is here basically giving you information on one land area is there. If we go into the yield, it is also talking about what are the yield levels for key producers in West Africa as well as in East Africa, and then allowing you to compare. For instance, if we take here the West African average and then where other countries lie in relation to West Africa average, and the same thing is done also for East Africa. You can also click on to have production. So what volumes are being produced by which countries? Again, you use the same functionality to determine which countries you want to show. Brazil, any other country you want to add, you can easily select and add onto them. So we show it also always for West Africa, East Africa, and then a comparison of the regional, the East and West regions also. Again, the next set is the production data, which is giving us production by key countries, East, West Africa, and then a comparison of both regions, as well as also production from different regional blocks. So we're talking even Brazil. We also add in here India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and then comparing with that for West and East Africa. Again, we also are looking at the possibility for those regions to look at a 3-year development of the trend of the production, and then also using the cumulative average growth rate for 10 years to also know the trends that are there for the different regions which you have selected here. So it allows you to have a very good view of not only the trend over the years, but also, again, what is the tendency in those trends as shown by the cumulative average growth rate. Again, we can look at the traded volumes. So we are having what volumes are leaving West Africa for certain destinations. So we know those countries or destinations which import raw cashew nuts from West Africa as well as East Africa, and then a combination of both East and West Africa. We also have the imports from major origins to India. So we take India particularly and look at which countries are supplying the bulk of the raw cashew nuts to India. Again, we do the same for the regional blocks, so not country specific, but West East Africa. Again, as similar to what we did for India, we also do for Vietnam to show Vietnam as a destination and which countries are providing the bulk of raw cashew nuts to Vietnam. Beyond the traded volumes, as I mentioned earlier, we have also prices. So we have farm gate prices, and these are weekly. We have collected weekly farm gate prices since 2006, and we are displaying that for the last 10 years. And so we are showing for a few countries, but you can also decide which countries in the database you want to use in analyzing the data or even in preparing a particular chart. Here we have the weekly, but then also on the right, we have the annual price information, the average annual prices based on the weekly prices that are indicated here. Now, beyond the farm gate prices, we also have this CFR, because raw cashew nuts are exported from Africa into certain destinations like India. So we want to know what those prices are. And we do the same for Vietnam. The information is also provided there. Again, Brazil is also a destination. It was a very important destination up to about 2013. But in the last 5 years, definitely exports from Africa to Brazil has really minimized, except fewer volumes from Cote d'Ivoire. Again, we also show the tendency, if you take the 3-year Vietnam-India average, tendency in the import prices per the countries, and also the general trend over the last 3 years up to 2019. The last set of charts are also giving the information on the annual prices of RCN by destination, whether to Brazil or India or Vietnam, in terms of prices to average prices to West African countries, and then also to East African countries, and then we have also the average here. And then finally, we are taking the Indian and Vietnam average and showing the CFR for RCN, and also there providing it on a weekly basis. So it's a lot of data, and it gives us also a very good trend on what is happening. And similar thing is also done here. So this is basically the set of data that you find in the RCN statistics component, which previously was difficult. You had to look for the data and then know which charts to create. But now you have all the charts already created here, and then you can decide which countries you want to display. So I'm going to move on. It's just Excel, as I mentioned earlier on, and it's only about clicking. So I click the next sheet, which gives us all the information on kernels. So what volumes of kernels are processed, in which destination. We're talking Africa, we're talking also Asia and Brazil. So we'll see all that information in there. We also are talking about volumes that are traded. So some countries are processing and then others are buying and consuming. So we'll have all that information, as well as the FOB prices are indicated here. So when we take the volume processed, we have for West Africa the countries that are producing or processing cashew, and also what volumes are being processed in each country. So it's possible to have the chart in this way. And by the way, you can always change the type of chart which is in there. So you can change the chart type so that you can have a different view other than what is here. We allow for that functionality so that people can be more flexible in the kind of reports they want to prepare, and also to be able to do more analysis out of it. Again, we are showing for West Africa, East Africa, and comparing the two blocks. And similarly, also comparing here in this particular chart, the volume produced in each of those, in the region West Africa, compared with the volume processed. So it tells you really huge volumes being produced in Africa, particularly West Africa, but a very small percentage processed. Is a similar situation in East Africa, and the overall picture is also indicated here, showing us also the trend in the growth of production compared to with that of processing. Clearly, it shows production growing faster than the rate at which we are doing local processing on the continent. Again, if you look at the volume processed, this is more a different perspective. So they are putting bar charts and to also show what percentages are allocated to particular countries when it comes to processing. And it's also very much like the information we had here, but here it's giving you the actual figures, whereas the relative amounts or percentages are shown here. Now, when you take the volume traded, you are looking at the which countries are kernel exporters. So we're looking at kernel exporters by origin. So it shows clearly countries like Vietnam being the largest exporters, and also here we are showing those who import a large volume going to North Africa, and the EU 28 accounting for the second largest portion. Again, if you look at this chart, it's presenting information on consumption by region. So which countries are consuming more? So you have Vietnam, the largest exporter of kernels, but the largest consumer is India. They have also their own internal processing, and that's why when it comes to import, we have North Africa being the highest importer, and yet India the highest consumer. Again, we have information on the share of the exported kernel by the major origins. They are, as I said, different perspectives of representing the information here. What is also important is to go into the share of kernel consumption. We had it up here, but then further analysis are done here for 2009, and to be able to compare it with 2019. Major blocks were, for instance, the US, which accounted for about 23%, now accounting for about 18%. So it allows you to have a good picture which blocks are growing when it comes to consumption over the years. But as they say, the devil is in the detail. So if you look closely at this table, we have provided a kernel growth in major regions. So we are looking at using the cumulative average growth rate, looking at the 5 years prior to, say, 2013, which shows countries like US with about 2.4% cumulative average growth rate up to 2013. Whereas if you take the last 5 years up to 2019, it is showing rather a decline in growth rate to minus 1.02%. So even though overall those countries will show in volume bigger amounts of growth, it is, if you look into the data we have provided and the analysis done there, you're able to understand the growth rate and how it is progressing compared to other periods. So the last set of data here is also the weekly FOB prices, taking India, Vietnam averages, and to show for 4 grades of kernel and how they behave. Of course, this is also another form of representing the same data here. And you will notice periods when the prices seem to come closer. If you look here, there's some kind of a convergence of the prices, and you will see that this has something to do also with the festivals in India, which is the largest consumer of kernels. So the data here is a large volume of data with a big database behind it, giving you all the analysis you need. And as I said, you can always change which countries are showing to allow you to prepare any table you want out of it, as well as even change the type of chart which is in display, and to show it in a different way that helps you to do the analysis you want to do. The last set of information in the Cashew barometer is, as I mentioned earlier, on policy information. So we have tried to put in very simple form a map of all the countries which produce cashew, and then where specifically there are policies being implemented when it comes to raw cashew nuts. So policies where there are RCN-focused policies, we show the countries and specifically what key policies are being implemented. If you move down, the top one was policies focused on RCN. Here are countries that are also implementing specific policies for processing. So the first map was giving you countries that showed or had policies for raw cashew nuts, and then the second map is giving you policies for processing, targeted at processing. The third set of maps are heat maps, actually, telling you for Africa which countries are producing and what is the level of production, and then the intensity of the colors will tell you the levels, the relative levels of production in those countries compared to the others which are there. So the deeper intensity for Africa being Cote d'Ivoire, where the largest volume of cashew is produced, and compared to the other lighter intensity showing other countries where lower levels of productions are recorded. Again, we have now, we also do it for the global picture. It's not only Africa, but then also we show production of cashew in the rest of the world, and also to show, apart from Cote d'Ivoire, we also have India. We have the volumes of India's production and that of other countries also, again, with the intensity indicating which levels of production we are having in those places. And all these maps can be used, copied directly. You right-click, you copy, and then you use it for the report you want to use. And then finally, we also have information on consumption. So who are the world major consumers of raw cashew nuts? It's showing very little actually for Africa, but then of course consumption is mainly in India, as we saw in the statistics. Again, North Africa and Europe, particularly Europe 28, and also other destinations, particularly also the Middle Eastern destinations. So all these are there together with the data, and once you have a copy of the cashew barometer, you will then be able to use all the data in the charts. So as I said, it will be coming up every September. Every September of every year, it will come. It will be released, and we are starting this September with the Cashew Barometer 2020, and then we will move on next year to 2021, and then and so on and so forth. So I think at the point I am at this point done with it, and I'll hand over back to Blessing to continue with the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ernest, for the presentation. We now know what the Cashew Barometer looks like. Now we'll proceed to the launch of the Cashew Barometer. But before we go to the launch, the actual launch of the barometer, I would like to take a review from a member of ACA, who is in the person of Mr. Olajiga Ayodele. Ayo is the director of Food Product Limited, a cashew processing company based in Nigeria with over 19 years working experience spanning management consulting, investment banking, and financial advisory. He is a processor and a member of the African Cashew Alliance. Ayo, if you can hear me, we would like you to speak right now. Can you hear me, Ayo?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, Ayo, can you please turn on your video so that we see you?
I'm trying to, but it says it's been disabled, so. All right, I think it's working now.
Yes, it is working. Thank
Excellent.
you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Blessing. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I've had the privilege of playing around with the Cashew Barometer. And the first thing I want to say is I just want to congratulate Jim and his team for what they've come up with here, because this is a major step towards addressing the information asymmetry in cashews. I mentioned to Ernest that only those of us who've been in the industry for so long will understand what has been done here, because before now, depending on who you are and where you are, you had different sets of data. And making business decisions based on, information that you're not even sure is accurate, obviously, like Jim alluded to, is usually a recipe for for disaster in business. So I want to congratulate the team for what they've come up with. And the second thing is, look, I want to recommend to anyone who's playing in any area of cashew that this is something you should subscribe to, because that information would allow you to at least make the best, and most optimal decision at any point in time when you're making decisions. And I sincerely hope that this is only the beginning of trying to formalize the industry. I'm looking forward to a point where cashew will be traded on some form of exchange, and farmers will be rewarded for quality. And the price at the farm will be linked directly to the farm in the supermarket, to the price in the supermarket, so that farmers are not asking for ridiculous prices, or processors or importers trying to pay very low prices. Anyways, I just want to congratulate everyone that's worked on this. It's a fantastic tool, and I trust this is only the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayo, for the review of the Cashew Barometer. We will now proceed to the actual launch of the Cashew Barometer. And to do us this honor is no other but Atou Coulibaly. Atou Coulibaly is the advisor to the Prime Minister of Côte d'Ivoire in charge of industry and private investment. In his role, Atou dedicates a good deal of his time to promote the development of agricultural industries in Côte d'Ivoire and beyond. Atou, si vous m'entendez, if you can hear me, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je ferai mon intervention en français. Je remercie donc la comme un outil puissant pour l'appropriation de ce qui se passe dans le secteur du cajou en Afrique, par extension dans le monde, parce que l'Afrique produit pas moins de la moitié de la production mondiale de l'Ouest. Cela est déjà mentionné par c'est que lui peut avoir accès.
Just hold on. Could you please slow down a bit so that the interpretation can also carry on at the same time?
Okay. Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Yes, I can hear you.
D'accord. Alors. Donc,
okay, you may continue now. Thank you.
Ok. Donc, je disais que je trouve que c'est un excellent outil. Donc, je le vois moi comme un outil de planification, mais bien évidemment, l'outil va servir à d'autres fins, comme pour les acteurs, notamment de la chaîne de valeur du cajou. L'Afrique est premier producteur de noix brutes avec pas moins de la moitié de la production mondiale, et force est de constater aujourd'hui que lorsque vous avez besoin de données, c'est un peu un patchwork. Donc, on prend les données de la consommation d'un côté, les données de la production d'un autre, les données des exportations, des importations. Donc, c'est vraiment assez compliqué d'avoir des données cohérentes d'un bout à l'autre. Et donc, c'est en cela que je considère que cet outil de l'ACA est extrêmement précieux, comme je le disais, pour beaucoup d'acteurs et notamment pour les États. Parce que pour faire une bonne planification, il faut disposer des bonnes données. Et donc, en tout cas, je suis particulièrement heureux d'avoir cet outil aujourd'hui disponible. Je pense que en termes de perspective, c'est que l'outil soit amené à évoluer, et je pense que c'est aussi le sens du travail qui est fait par l'ACA. C'est un outil vivant qui va intégrer dans les années et mois à venir d'autres données telles que la géolocalisation des terres et de disposer d'informations de plus en plus fiables. Donc, lorsqu'on a eu, par exemple, la crise de la COVID-19, nous avons souhaité mettre en place, en tout cas en ce qui concerne la Côte d'Ivoire, mais je pense que c'était le cas dans beaucoup de pays, nous avons souhaité mettre en place des politiques en faveur donc de la chaîne des valeurs du cajou. Et lorsqu'on s'est rapproché de ce qui se passe sur le terrain, bon, il y a eu dans beaucoup de cas la nécessité de mandater des cabinets internationaux pour aller voir précisément quelle est la disposition sur le terrain en termes de propriété des terrains, production effective par planteur, parce qu'on connaît la production globale, mais quand c'est par planteur, c'est toujours un peu plus compliqué parce que les indemnisations se font sur une base individuelle et non pas sur la base de ce qui est produit dans une région. Donc, de ce fait, on voit que si on a un tel outil de l'ACA qui est détaillé par pays, mais aussi par zone, je pense que à l'avenir, ça ne peut être que de plus en plus efficace et permettre des planifications et des interventions efficaces de l'État. Donc, lorsque l'État intervient bien, cela peut aussi être un facteur important pour la mise en place d'investissements dans la chaîne de valeur par d'autres acteurs qui auront les informations nécessaires. Si vous allez, par exemple, si vous voulez investir à la bourse, si vous voulez investir dans les actions d'une société, bon, vous avez les notes d'analystes qui vous donnent à peu près pas mal de choses sur les caractéristiques de l'action, les comparaisons sur le marché international, les performances passées, les prévisions à venir. Et c'est sur la base que vous faites un investissement avisé. Et donc, c'est en cela que je suis, moi, en tout cas, particulièrement heureux d'avoir cet outil avec nous aujourd'hui. Et donc, sans plus tarder, je vais donc déclarer officiel le lancement du baromètre du Cajou 2020. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Koulibaly. Thank you very much, Mr. Koulibaly, for the launch of the ACA Cashew Barometer. Now, with this done, I would like to invite the Managing Director of the African Cashew Alliance to tell us how we can access this barometer. Ernest, if you can hear me, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blessing. I just would like to say that the Cashew Barometer is going to be available as two different types of licenses. We will have the individual or single user license, which can come in the form of just the charts and maps, no database, and then people can buy them at a very low cost, and to also use the maps in there. It will also be available as an individual or single user license, which has the database behind and a different pricing. Then the second type of license will be the corporate license, corporate up to 5 users, and then also corporate without any limit on the number of users. And for the corporate, it will always have the database behind it and all the full functionality of the license. So once it's been launched, you can send us an email by ACA or ACA at africancashewalliance.com to book a copy, or to go to our website, click on the Cashew Barometer, and then it will lead you to a page where all the types are there, and then you can order for your copy. So on that note, I just invite you all, now that it is launched, to get your copies of the Cashew Barometer and to help the industry grow, as has been stated by our speakers. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ernest. So the news is out there. Tell everybody that you know, anybody in the cashew industry, the Cashew Barometer is officially launched. Get you a copy, get a copy for your business partners. That said, we are done with the first part of today's session, and we'll proceed to the second part, which is a presentation by TechnoServe. If you have any question on the Cashew Barometer, please write to ACA at African Cashew Alliance. ACA at African Cashew Alliance. We will proceed to the second part of this session, which is a presentation by TechnoServe on methods of intervention using drones to capture cashew producing areas. The presentation will be done by James Obarowski, James Zabarski is the Global Cashew Practice Lead at TechnoServe and Country Director for Benin Cajù. James has overseen the Benin Cajù project for the last 4 years, building on TechnoServe's 25 years of cashew experience. With the addition of the new US aid-funded regional representation program, TechnoServe has a 16 million global portfolio of cashew programming, serving hundreds of thousands of farmers and supporting tens of thousands of jobs in processing. These programs are bringing innovative service delivery models with field-ready technology, supporting better decision-making by authorities at local and national level, driven by better data and analysis, and shaping the national conversation about business and entrepreneurship. Without saying much again, James, if you can hear me, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Blessing. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this presentation. First, I'd like to start out by congratulating ACA on the Cashew Barometer. I know how long Ernest and the team have been working on this, and Jim. So big congratulations. It's a really amazing thing for the industry. As we all know, good information is a precious resource in cashew. Blessing, I hope everyone can see and hear me just fine.
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Perfect. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to cut my video just for a good audio connection and go ahead with our presentation. So I wanted to share with you guys today, related to market information data, some of the work that we're doing on land mapping and identifying cashew plantations and evaluating them using remote sensing techniques. I'll also talk briefly about a few other tools that we have in development we'll be releasing in the coming weeks. So our agenda will cover context of cashew in Benin, where our primary project is working and related to these tools, and then an overview of the initiative using online courses or a MOOC for training processing staff, and an Android app to help measure cashew quality with different partners. So in the remote sensing, our overall theory and reasoning for pursuing this project is that by combining satellite drone data with ground data from our program activities, we should be able to develop a machine learning algorithm to map cashew farms. And that will allow us to target gap training and better formulate policies based on more accurate data, which will lead to increased yields and better climate smart policies. And so, of course, these combined will result in improved sustainable production, increased trade and export. So what are we talking about? What is remote sensing and machine learning? We have partnered with the University of Minnesota, where there's a team led by Professor Jin, who unfortunately couldn't make it due to the time zone. It would be unfairly early to him for him to join our call today. But he and his graduate student team and lab have been assisting us to develop a machine learning model to map cashew production and help us improve the data that we're providing so that we're actually gathering the correct information for them to be able to do that. And so on the project side, the TechnoServe project Benin Cajù has been assessing the most cost-efficient mix of satellite and drone data, actually doing the collection of data imagery, flying the drones, and doing manual ground labeling for training zones, And then refining labeling protocols and training local partners on how to correctly label imagery and GIS data for machine learning purposes. So why all this work that we're talking about? You may have heard in various fora about how satellites are being used to map agriculture. Much of the work that has been done and much of the sort of functional tools that exist for using drones and satellites for agriculture is based on large commercial farms like we typically see in Europe, United States, and parts of Asia and Latin America, and to a lesser degree, maybe in South Africa and East Africa. But that's not the typical case that we see for most cashew farmers. The example on the left here is a typical large-scale farm. We have a regularly planted farm with equally spaced trees. They're all of the same variety. It's all the same species of tree. And so this is a pretty easy thing for a computer to understand from drone or satellite pictures and to provide some analysis on. But that's not the reality we have. The reality we have is on the right. So here we have a typical plantation in Benin, where we have a mix of different species, not only cashew. They're of all different ages. So you have some younger trees in the middle, some older trees to the left and right. And it's interspersed with other crops. This picture is taken during the dry season, but we can see clearly that this is an active farm, and towards the top, the bottom, and on the right, those fields are typically planted with other crops, like maize, for example. And that presents a lot of challenges for machine learning to be able to identify and understand that all of these different examples are cashew while still separating cashew from other crops. So TechnoServe has been using a whole variety of data pulled together to be able to accurately map cashew. We used different kinds of satellite data. We had a big learning over the past few months where we discovered that we're actually able to use lower resolution data from Planet Labs, 3.5 meters per pixel, rather than 50 centimeter data from Airbus. And that's really important because the 50 centimeter data is super expensive. To give an idea, mapping all of Benin with that would cost at least $500,000 just for the data. And you would have to do that regularly. So the Planet Labs data is much, much cheaper. And the reason we can use it is because it's rather than one image every year or so, or every 2 years, Planet Labs takes their imagery every few days. And so we're able to use a large number of images over a short period of time. And that allows us to map with the lower resolution. The resolution is basically when you, for example, on Google Earth, if you zoom in too much, you'll see it gets blurry. The higher the resolution, so the smaller the size here, 50 centimeters, you would be able to zoom in more and still have a clear image. We've also been asked why not use the free Sentinel satellite data that is available. The Sentinel data is 10 meters, and there's some older data, Landsat at 30 meters. We found that is not sufficient to identify cashew trees where a canopy is typically maximum 10 meters. And so it was not effective for mapping cashew. We also have some aerial imagery in Benin from the National Geographic Institute. And we are collecting a massive collection, actually. It's one of the largest drone projects ever done of drone imagery. We're collecting close to 10,000 hectares of drone imagery of a representative sample of production in Benin. And we're collecting it on sites where we've already done several years of yields surveys so that we can compile multiple layers of data and start to draw additional lessons. And of course, using GIS systems and machine learning. So we feed all of that data with some guidance into a computer that helps us automatically generate an algorithm that can automatically identify cashew farms. We've also started collecting some other data, including precipitation and temperature from, again, National Institute of Weather in Benin. As we start to build a database where we hope eventually we'll be able to make some assessments and predictions even about yield. So all this data pulled together forms a comprehensive system. We take that satellite data, combine it with drone field surveys, weather data. We create a set of layers within a GIS database. We then start to develop a model using machine learning techniques. And that will, the goal is for that to be able to produce capability to do crop acreage estimation, crop health monitoring, and crop yield estimation. The overall roadmap here is to collect the training data, first identify plantations, then start to be able to classify. I said tree species. Actually, in addition to classifying tree species, we'd like to go further and classify cashew plantations by health and by practices that are applied. And then scale that to a national mapping. So not just to do a small sample area, but actually be able to do this for an entire country or region. So we click these images, you can see different examples, and we create labels. So in order to train a machine learning algorithm, we need to create labeled imagery so that the computer can understand this is a cashew plantation, this is forest, this is just background of other cropland, and this is an urban area. That allows the computer to, after seeing those examples, to look at new imagery and see what it looks most like. Does this new image look more like forest, look more like plantation, or more like an urban area? So you can see here, this is the actual sample area we've been working on. On the left is an example of Airbus imagery where we can see it's an aerial image of an area where there's a lot of cashew production and a few urban areas towards the right and the bottom. And I said up here, we've been able to map at 85% accuracy. Actually, in the past few days, we've been able to get that over 90%. And so on the right, you can see the prediction we were able to achieve. And so we actually only trained the computer on a small area in the bottom left and then applied it to the whole area. And we were able to map out those 4 different categories. Here's the next iteration where we are pretty close to now. And so we used that historical data from 2015 and ran the analysis on it as well. That allowed us to get an idea of the overall area planted with cashew and how it's evolved over time. So in the past 5 years, we've actually seen, and this is an area near Parakou in central Benin, in Jao, where the area planted with cashew has increased from 37 square kilometers to over almost 49 square kilometers. And at the same time, the forest area has not significantly decreased. That's a great sign. It means we've heard from a number of people, especially in the shea industry, that cashew was expanding into forest lands or shea park lands. The area that we've analyzed so far, that does not appear to be the case. And we're going to expand this analysis to all of Benin and have a firm conclusion. But the other big lesson here is a 30% expansion in cashew planting areas. With this data alone, we can already start to make some predictions about future production of cashew in Benin. If we know that the area that is planted with cashew is expanded by 30% over the past 5 years, given the agronomic qualities of cashew and reaching peak production, usually around 7 to 8 up to 10 years, we can estimate in the coming years how much cashew will increase or decrease over time. And we can see clearly here that it looks like cashew production in Benin is set to increase significantly in the next few years. And those are net increase. So here we can see there's some changes as well. The top and bottom sets of photos. On the top, we can see there was most of the area was planted with some young cashews in 2015. We see those small green dots. And then there's an older plantation on the top right. But then if we move to the right side, the grayer image for 2020, we can see that as those younger trees that were planted grew up, they actually cut down the older forest in the top right. So you see farmers, you can actually observe farmers shifting from older plantations to younger, more productive plantations. And a little bit in reverse in the bottom set of photos where we see an older plantation has been reduced, but it has not been replaced with new planting. The other thing that we've been working on the past few weeks has been trying to improve the efficiency so we don't need as many labels. We started out by labeling a 10,000 hectare area, which is quite large. It's a lot of work to label that large of an area with very detailed, very accurate labels. So we're starting to use some advanced machine learning techniques to reduce the labeling area that we need to be able to train the algorithm. Training is still necessary, but we can really reduce the time and number of examples we need by using some of these techniques. So that's where we are currently in our technology development. Our overall vision with this is to be able to deepen impact for Cashew in Benin and expand to other geographies. So, we're planning on layering on quality data, which we'll talk a little bit shortly, and our yields data, and create some targeted training programs that we could actually, in addition to just knowing the area of cashew, we'd like to be able to identify the low yielding versus high yielding plantations, healthy versus unhealthy plantations, and actually use that to give an extension worker working in one area in one community and say, give him a map he can access from his smartphone and say, here's all the farms that need some attention in your area. And then he can make a plan to go and visit each of them, find the owners, and address the problems that we've observed from satellite data. This is a much more efficient way than we currently do it, which is mass training of farmers, many of whom may already be applying best practices or don't need the help. And given the limited resources for extension, in Benin there's about 34 public extension agents for 200,000 farming families. That's not enough to reach everyone. So if we're able to target the farmers that most need it, they'll be much more effective. We're also looking to expand other geographies and crops. We're already collaborating with TechnoServe's Connect Cajù program in Mozambique to assess how this can be applied there as well. And then looking to other USDA focus areas. So this includes coffee, where it looks like we're currently looking into possibilities for mapping coffee using this time series imagery technique, even if it's shade grown, as well as other crops. So that's it for machine learning and remote sensing. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. I wanted to briefly introduce our chatbot and quality app. So for the past couple of months, we've been working closely with Peter Massawi, who I think many of you may know is one of the premier agronomists in Africa, and Rui Matos, a former colleague of ours, an expert on cashew production and nurseries in particular in Mozambique, along with the team in Benin, on Benin Cajù, to develop new manuals, comprehensive updated agronomy manuals, both for cashew nursery management and for cashew agronomy. We'll be publishing those manuals through the ACA network in the next couple of weeks. We're just finalizing a few content items. So that will be available to everyone on an open source license. We have, in addition to make that content more accessible and more easily searchable and useful for field agents, we have taken that content and we have started to build it into a chatbot and wiki, online wiki, so that a field agent who runs into a question or can't remember a technique or is looking for example photos or video of a particular cashew production practice can intuitively pose a question or ask what the information he's looking for using WhatsApp or SMS or a Facebook Messenger in order to ask that question and get the answer that he or she is looking for. So what is a chatbot? Basically, it's a computer program that simulates human conversation. So we can use text or voice. Right now, our chatbot is based on text, although we are considering future solutions with voice. And they can get an immediate answer. So 24 hours a day, no need for human follow-up. We do also compile questions from that were, maybe we didn't have the answer, the chatbot wasn't able to answer, so that we can follow up with users afterwards. But our goal is to be able to answer as many as we can. The computer program that's behind all of this is actually Google's natural language processing artificial intelligence program. It's very, very new. It's one of the few that can handle multiple languages, not just English. Most chatbots currently developed in the world. The artificial intelligence was trained in English only, we found, which is quite surprising. So we chose Google particularly because they were able to handle French and potentially Portuguese as well. So the idea here is to be able to be adaptive to user needs. And so in addition to providing a quick answer to the question that's posed by the field worker or extension worker, it will also provide a link for additional information on the wiki. So we've got a website that has comprehensive information. And that website allows you to easily download as a PDF the section that you're looking at for use offline. That was an important thing we got from early feedback from users, was that they wanted to be able to access potentially offline. So there is an SMS link where they can get a short answer by text only. But if they're looking for images and pictures, they can find an internet connection, open the page, download it to their phone, and then use it offline. Obviously, video will also be available as we start to release more content. So here we're basically trying to increase the efficiency of extension worker training, especially for community-based farmer leaders and other community stakeholders, cooperative leaders as well. It allows us to scale more quickly and get more people to be more effective in the field. It can be frustrating to a farmer to ask a question to a field trainer extension worker that may not have that answer immediately available, or might not provide consistent answers. Most extension workers are trained in general agronomy and are responsible for multiple crops. And so it's really helpful for them to have this sort of encyclopedia or reference book in their pocket that they can quickly look up the information. So the goal here is that the information is immediately available with no time lag to go back and ask their supervisor and come back in a few days later. It's easily accessible, again, with a simple platform. Most people in Benin are quite familiar with WhatsApp. It's consistent, so we're not making up answers on the fly, and consistently up to date, so we can regularly update content. Unlike a fixed manual, printed manual, we can continuously create new content and add it to the chatbot. And of course, rapidly scalable. So as we're building this on SMS, we have to do a bit more incrementally, but the WhatsApp and Facebook platforms, we can scale across Africa very quickly. And of course, we're currently developing in French for Benin, but we are simultaneously building content for English, and we'll be doing a Portuguese translation soon. So that's it for the chatbot. I want to touch briefly on the quality app. Many of you are familiar with the problem that 3 people can do an assessment of KOR on a lot of cashew and raw cashew nuts and come up with 3 different answers. We've seen a number of conflicts between particularly farmer cooperatives and off-takers, as often the farmer groups have a weak understanding of quality and aren't able to assess it themselves. So there's 2 factors to that. One is training, of course, and making sure they have the right tools, that they have a humidimeter. Sorry, that's my French entering my English there. Device to measure humidity, the cutting tool, and of course the scale to be able to do this correctly. The other part is doing the calculation correctly. And what we found is that errors in calculation are very, very common. And there's also, of course, the risk that the calculation doesn't produce an answer that someone likes, and so they just modify the final result. So we're trying to get at here is a simple standard mechanism to capture and record quality data that's accompanied by photos, and where the input data is included in the report, so you can see how the calculation, which is automatic, was derived. And sorry, just another point on this. If at the farm gate there isn't a clear mutual understanding of quality, then it's very difficult to communicate to farmers why they should follow best practices in harvest and post-harvest, which directly impacts the quality. This is typically the sort of farm gate or the post-harvest period is where quality is most affected. To ensure that farmers have taken the time to adequately dry their product, that they have stored it correctly. And so this is sort of the biggest lever we can do to increase the value of their cashew crop. And that's a net increase for everyone. If good practices are followed and the quality of the crop is maximized by correct harvest, drying, and storage, that increases the value of the market for everyone. It means it's more easy to process for processors downstream. It increases the price that can be paid to farmers on average. It increases revenue, export revenue for countries that are major cashew exporters. So everyone benefits from better quality. So we've actually created a simple Android app to walk through a user step by step how to actually perform a KOR quality assessment. So we do a guide on proper sampling and evaluation techniques built into the app. It captures location, it's time-stamped and geotagged. We include photos so you can see the crop that the product that they're actually using and the device they're using to do the measurements. And we capture all the key quality parameters: outturn, nut count, moisture level, defective nut rate, etc. And so then this can be shared with a buyer by SMS, WhatsApp, or email from the app. So in addition to that, we actually, we've built two versions of this. There's a free open source version we'll be publishing on the Google Play Store hopefully next week. So anyone can download this. We'll share out a link via the ACA community. There's also a pro version which has a dashboard, management dashboard, and allows you to track stocks among other tools. This pro version requires a bit of support to set up, so there is some cost to it. But our technology partners based in Kigali are very eager to support this. And we're interested in any major buyers, traders, and processors who may be interested in this tool. It's very inexpensive, and we hope that it can really help them have better visibility and keep better track of the quality of the product that they're purchasing. So you can see here a couple of examples. You have either a field tech or a buyer interface. And so the user can sign up to either conduct and send audits as a field tech or to request and receive those quality audits as a buyer. And you can see the buyer has view on audits to be requested. This is the mobile version. The dashboard is much more comprehensive on your computer. Apologies for the messy slide here, but basically we have some photo required proof that you've actually done the different steps to assess quality. And you have these information button you can click here for, so all the way through the app, if you aren't sure how to correctly enter information, there's a button you can click, a little eye, to get instructions on how to conduct that step. And you can see on the right here, we have sort of an example of results. There's some pretty good cashew. We've got 8% moisture and 48 pounds. I'd be very happy with that. So just as an example. So for the free version, we are planning to be able to create some heat maps, as Zaka has done, of anonymized data on quality. So not linked to any particular user, but just a heat map of the overall territory. We've seen a couple of different providers, ACA, Today, and others have provided some estimations on typical quality seen by region. This should greatly, as more and more people use it, particularly at the cooperative level, we should be able to see in real time how quality is evolving. For example, after rains, we can kind of observe if quality checks are suddenly resulting on average a lower rate. Again, that's only for the free version. The pro version would be a closed box for the user. Thank you very much. Looking forward to, I think there's some questions in chat, but I appreciate you guys following the presentation and look forward to hear what you think.
Thank you very much, James, for the presentation. We will now proceed to questions and answers. Does anybody have any question? You may drop it in using the Q&A feature or show by raising your hand and you will be called to ask your question. James, you may also want to leave your contacts in the chat so that if anybody wants to ask you questions, maybe directly, they can contact you.
Absolutely. There we go.
James is leaving his contacts in the chat. Please reach out to James for any questions. It's jobarowski@tns.org. All videos and all recordings, videos and presentations from the conference and the side events are uploaded onto the website. So with each session ending, there's an update onto the website. So go to africancashewalliance.com and you will see all presentations under the conference section. The next side event is next week Wednesday, and it's going to be on Cashew apple processing. Next week Wednesday, we'll have another side event. We will have the next 20 minutes for networking. If you have a question, you can still ask your question. So we will have the next 30 minutes for all questions, networking, and interactions. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any question, please leave it in the chat and we'll pick it up. You may write to James or write to ACA at African Cashew Alliance with all your questions or need for clarification. We have come to the end of this side event and we'll meet you again next week, Wednesday. Same time, 9 o'clock GMT. If you have any question, please leave it in the chat and we'll pick it up. The platform will be open for the next 20 minutes for all interactions.